Unfortunately, while Iowa did not experience a historic season for the team on the field, certainly Hawkeye fans experienced a historic season from one particular player we will discuss, as that, of course, catapults us into 2025. We appreciate you being here at Hawkeyes Live, right here at the Voice of College Football. Of course, Corey Bratta, he's the brains of the operation from the Hawkeye of the Storm. Catch Corey on a regular basis. Of course, we are real close to March Madness. And will the Iowa men's basketball team even make the Big Ten tournament?
I think they'll make the Big Ten tournament. They got to win both the games this week, and they play both at home, one against the worst team in the conference in Washington. Oregon's pretty good. They play them tomorrow night. A lot of fans, there's scuttle right now, and I'll throw a name out there, even though you're not a college basketball guy. I think you'll recognize the last name. I'm sure you will. And that is the head coach at West Virginia men's basketball, and that's Darian DeVries. Because, of course, everybody knows who Jared DeVries is. He's a legend in Hawkeye lore. His name's up on the press box. And so Darian's a hot name right now. There's a lot of rumors flying about him coming back to Iowa. He was the head coach at Drake. West Virginia hired him. He's had a great start there in replacement of Bobby Huggins, who was, a Hall of Fame coach. I know you know who Bobby Huggins is, Hall of Fame coach in college basketball. So anyways, Fran's still the head coach here, at least for now. And I've made it very clear where I stand. I think they probably need a change. I'm not necessarily calling for Fran to be fired. And I don't really think there's a point in doing that during the season anyways. I think after the season, that's when those evaluations should happen, and I'm happy to discuss those at that time. Women's basketball is in a pretty good spot. They took your Buckeyes to overtime Monday, President Day game on Fox, and amazing performance. That's an Ohio State team that's number 8 in the country, and Iowa was down 12 with about a minute and a half to play, and they tied it up and sent it to overtime. I didn't expect them to win in overtime because a lot went into coming back in that game, and you're on the road, so I usually favor the home team in those situations, and Buckeyes ended up winning. But just the fact that Iowa fought to get there, and Ohio State did miss a few free throws and turn the ball over once inside of a minute to play, but I think they're in a good place. Women's basketball in a good place. They've won 6 now of their last 7. They play number 3 in the country, UCLA, on Sunday, so they got a long prep for that. And who knows? The men's basketball's not out of it. They have to start winning. If they win these next 2 at home, and like I say, I think they should. Oregon's the toughest challenge in there because they're middle of the pack fighting for March Madness as well. But if Iowa can beat Oregon and Washington, that means they'll have won 3 of 4. And Mark, I think you probably recognize with the 20-game conference schedule and the number of teams that make it into March, if you can fight to 500 in the conference, that gives you a shot. At 5-9, if they win these next 2 at home, that's 7-9. And then at least you look at yourself and you're like, hey, if we win 3 of our last 4, we can get to 500 and give ourselves a shot. I don't know that gets you in without working the Big Ten tournament, but people have asked me that. Are they going to avoid the bottom 3? I don't really care. Like, I've seen Iowa flame out so many times in the conference tournament. If that's what if that's what they're fighting for, then I don't care. I don't care, because if they're 15th in the conference, they're not going to make a run to the championship game and win anyways and make it into the NCAA tournament. And I don't care if they win a game in the Big Ten tournament. It means nothing unless they win it or win enough to get to March. And if they end up 15 or 14 in the conference, they're going to have to win the conference tournament to make it to the big dance. Does that make sense? Good. I'm really not someone who sits around thinking about, hey, can they make a run in the conference tournament? Fran has done that. What he hasn't done is get them to a second weekend in March. And so unless that happens this year, at a bare minimum, they got to make the tournament for me to say, yeah, Fran is safe. I think if they make the tournament at this point, the turnaround that would be necessary for that, Fran is safe, assuming he wants to return. And if they don't make the tournament, which is more likely, then those conversations need to be had. I think they will be had, and he may just leave on his own volition. So we'll see.
Interesting. Maybe I'll watch some March basketball. I used to love conference tournaments.
I don't know why I know you got a lot going on all the time, but I would think after football winds down, that would be something that you would enjoy doing still following March Madness.
Yeah, it would not pain me to sit down and watch a basketball game.
Yeah.
What I was smirking about, if you caught this, was it was my Lady Buckeyes, whom I've never seen even score a basket, But when you were referring to the Iowa men's basketball team that you were greatly invested in, it was they need to do this, not us.
Yes.
I have no issue with fans. I stand on the place where fans can say, we won, we lost.
Yeah.
They support the team. The team doesn't exist if the fans don't exist. I have no issue with that.
Yeah, that's some truth
That's
to
my
that.
position, at
Yeah,
least.
I'm fine with that. I know we're going to talk about running backs today, and we're going to review one of the recent classes. So, for people that don't know this, we're kind of treating this like a series, as a countdown to spring football. We're talking the different positions, and then of course these recent recruiting classes, and kind of running through who's been a success, who's been a bust, and I think it's those the recruiting conversations about recent classes. Those are going to become clearer and clearer as we go further and further back, because we're going to be looking at guys whose careers are either winding down or have ended. And even if we want to factor in, we haven't really talked about NFL success. Do we really care about that? Obviously, if you've had success at Iowa, there's very few guys that struggle at Iowa and then go on to play really well in the league. Although Lucas Van Ness is an example of a guy who, I mean, he hasn't really become an all-pro type of guy in the league, but the fact that he was drafted first round after not being a starter at Iowa, that's certainly an exception to the rule, if you will. So this should be fun.
So for the past 2 weeks, as Corey has mentioned, we have looked at the tight ends position, which, from what I understand, I'll have to look this up. I think Iowa has been fairly prominent at the tight end position. And then, of course, last week was defensive line. We're looking at the running backs today. And we'll preface this, Corey, by saying, based on what I remember going into last season, it looked like Iowa was going to have a very interesting three-headed monster at running back and be very formidable at the position. And then, of course, Kaleb Johnson separated himself. And before we move on to the prospectus for 2025, if you can kind of give us some thoughts on how historic the Kaleb Johnson season was. I think our evaluation of his play going into the season was he had all sorts of talent. He showed it in spurts. He had solid games and so forth. He was a very good running back, but there was something not quite there. And he certainly found his groove, his gear, and just became a dominant running back. And if the team success would have matched what you and I forecasted, maybe he gets a trip to New York City.
Maybe. I think it's always an uphill battle as a running back. But the other problem is going up against a guy, albeit at a different level, over at Boise State, that just turned heads every week and put up insane video game-like numbers. But yeah, I mean, you weigh him against some of the better backs of the Kirk Ferentz era. We've had this discussion. He's either one or two, right? It's either Sean Green or it's Kaleb Johnson. Sean Green's the only other running back who's had consistent NFL success at Iowa under Kirk Ferentz. Obviously, Liddell Betts had some NFL success. Tyler Kudzin's had a cup of coffee in the league. I don't know if this is this was last year. This is Kaleb. You're looking at Kaleb's numbers from last year. For a career, Kaleb finished with almost 2,800 yards, which eclipsed Tyler Goodsin's 2,600 yards. It's actually not as big of a difference as you would expect. Now, Goodson was here 2019 to 2021. So technically, if you're looking at it from that perspective, 3 years versus 3 years, the difference is, and I'm not saying this is credit to Tyler Goodson for kind of being more productive at an earlier age than Kaleb was. Kaleb was really not playing a ton early on. He played some, but he split a lot of carries with Jazz Patterson, with LeSean Williams. It wasn't until this year that he became an all-world back. If he had had even just 2 seasons, like he decided to come back next year, Mark, he'd have blown these numbers off the chart. So as it stands, certainly if you want to compare individual seasons, it's been a long time. Again, at least Sean Green, since we've seen something like that. Akram Wadley actually finished with more rushing yards, but again, took him longer to get there. He finished with over almost 2,900 yards. Other guys that are even vaguely close. Mark Weissman finished with 2,600 yards during his career over a 3-year span. Jordan Canzeri eclipsed 2,000. LaShawn Daniels, 1,900. Marcus Coker, boy, his career could have been something. What a year he had in 2011. and his career was cut short of injury. He's one of those what if guys that maybe he would have been. His style was somewhat similar to Tyler Goodson, kind of a longer bodied, long strider type of back. And his career was cut short due to injury. Adam Robinson was promising. He had some issues. He had some off the field issues, and was at Iowa very briefly for a 2-year stretch. And then you get back into Sean Green, Albert Young, obviously had huge numbers, put up over 3,000 yards over a longer span of time during his career at Iowa, and Fred Russell, obviously his nephew Jalen Watson's a DB on the Iowa roster, and then Liddell Betts put up ridiculous numbers over the course of his career, over 3,600 yards, and Tavian Banks, if you want to go back into the Fry era. So that's Kaleb's certainly for an individual season. He's right there with anybody and everybody. And Sean Green carved himself out a nice career with the Jets, with the Titans. I wouldn't say certainly he wasn't an All-Pro or a Pro Bowl type of back, but shelf lives are so short for running backs. I don't think anybody can blame Kaleb for leaving when he did, especially at any position nowadays. You got to be able to make money when you do with football. But for his situation as a running back, given the season he's coming off of, and there's some question marks up front because they had a lot of experienced guys. You wouldn't want to come back with a younger offensive line, have your numbers dip, and take a hit in your draft stock. So, they got a lot. They got big shoes to fill in, but it's going to be a running back by committee approach unless somebody emerges, and I don't know who that would be. They don't have the physical specimen that Kaleb Johnson was, but as you mentioned earlier, he had not showcased himself as a do it all back, as a trademark, Madden type of back until this past season. It's like the people they just ripped me through the first 2 months of the season because I had Kamari Moulton as my top running back. It's like, so did Iowa. Okay. Whether you want to believe the depth chart or not, he was number 1 on the depth chart, and Kaleb Johnson had not shown anything to be, made, how much backlash there would have been had he manifested himself as the number 1 back through his first couple of seasons. People would have been up in arms had they seen somebody else atop the depth chart heading into year 3, but they weren't. So guys, maybe that's a testament to Liddell Betts. Certainly the hard work that Kaleb Johnson put in during the offseason paid off, and maybe they'll get somebody with a similar trajectory that's on the roster right now.
As we see there, Corey did a nice job without any notes of running down the career rushing leaders at Iowa. Cedric Shaw on top, and we see if Kaleb Johnson would have come back and rushed for roughly 1,100 yards, then he would have become the all-time rushing leader, and 5.5 yards per carry is certainly impressive.
Yeah, how about Tavian Banks, 6 yards a carry? That's a nuts number, right? Over the course of his career, 6 yards per carry. Sean Green was 5.9. Those are but again, we're talking all-time greats, right? I mean, between Tavian, I got to get Tavian. Tavian was on a show with me here a year or two ago. I got to get him back on. I know he's offered to come on, and he'd be a great conversation. We could get him on this show. He still lives here in the state of Iowa, as far as I'm aware. Mark Fetter, there's a name.
Yeah, see, when you get these all-time lists and you've got these databases that can just generate everything now, it's not manually done by some dude that's just racking up the first 10 or 15. It's just funny to go down. They got everybody who's ever gained a yard, I assume, here in the history of Iowa football. Yes, all the way down to, we're going to run into Spencer Petras here if they go into the negatives, I guess.
Deacon Hill. You're going to find some Deacon Hill on there. I don't know that you're going to
Cooper DeJean's got 8 yards.
I think he had one. Didn't he have one? Didn't Cooper DeJean have 1 carry? I think he got 1 carry on offense. Yeah.
There it is.
Sam Laporta, they used him as a Wildcat quarterback. Look, he's on there. Two carries for 6 yards. That's about the dumbest thing Brian ever.
Right?
That's the dumbest thing Brian ever did.
That.
Yeah, that was the dumbest thing I'd ever seen. Anyways, now think about how good he is. Now he is a Pro Bowl tight end. Imagine if they had used him in a meaningless bowl game and he got hurt. How dumb would that have been? But anyways, you want to jump to this year, Mark?
Yeah, let's get into
the guys
it.
in there.
Fun group. We'll pull up last year's stats and check out, starting with Kamari Moulton. How would you compare him as a back versus Kaleb Johnson?
Oh, there's just nobody. Like I said, there's nobody on the roster that you can compare to Kaleb with Kaleb's size and stride. Now, I think he's got more wiggle. I thought Kaleb really improved in that regard, but he's never going to be your zigzag type of back. But yeah, certainly Kamari is in line for a lot more as it relates to touches. He had 500 yards this last year. It's not a bad number when you look at the colossal amount of volume that Kaleb Johnson got from week 1.5 because he got suspended week 1 to the end of the year, end of the season. So I would probably give him the nod to be the starter. I really like the upside of Jazz Patterson. I just don't know what the coaching staff doesn't see in practice because he had fallen off the depth chart for a while toward the end of fall camp. He did suffer an injury at one point and finally worked his way back into the rotation. But this is the second straight year where I thought they're going to have somebody leave. Now, they could still leave, but we're talking spring ball. We're talking battle and heading into spring practice. So assuming those guys are both healthy, but they're both going to have an opportunity to battle and see who comes out on top. And then maybe one of them leaves at the end of spring ball. I don't think that's going to happen because I think there's enough carries to go around. And I think that if they were going to leave, then they would have left probably during the cycle in December because that's the hotter cycle, a hotter window to enter. But I think those two guys could be a really nice complement of one another. They're not as stark in difference as we saw with Kaleb versus anyone and everyone else. And then it'll be interesting to see how Terrell Washington factors in to what Tim Lester wants to do because they line him out wide a lot and kind of use him like a Swiss Army knife in a sense. We'll see how much. I think they're going to probably burn him across the line of scrimmage or boundary to boundary pre-snap. And, same thing with Brevin Dahl. He worked some with receivers during this past season and leading into the season. I love his speed. He was coming off a broken leg his true freshman season, and I know he was still turning heads. He's said to be the fastest guy on the team, even faster than Caden Weegan, which is something because Caden Weegan is, he won the Returner of the Year award nationally. And what a blessing it is to have him back, not only with the special teams group, but also receiver play, maybe get him factored into things. So, yeah, they got some intriguing guys. I like Brevin Dahl from a perspective of his speed and, his speed. And, you watch it now, high school aside, you got to kind of weigh this. And he played at a good level of high school football in Iowa. But you don't see too many guys that pair speed with the center of gravity that I see Brevin Dahl play with, at least at the high school level. And again, how much will that translate? I have not, you don't see that often. It's usually one or the other, even with Kaleb Johnson. He had this, I shouldn't say he didn't have speed, but Brevin Dahl's also got the quickness, I think, that maybe even Kaleb lacks. Now, whether that translates as a running back in the Big Ten level, we'll see. But he's an intriguing one. And then the other guy that's intriguing because of his size in a different way than Kaleb Johnson would be Xavier Williams. He's just got tree trunks for legs. He'll be a redshirt freshman out of the Chicago area and a really nice kid who turned our heads in the media. I know sitting there at Kids Day, the open practice in August last summer, really turned heads. He's a hard guy to bring down. So, yeah, you have different types of backs, and I think the ideal is to find your do-it-all type of guy, which ended up being Kaleb Johnson. I didn't know that he'd ever reach there. He certainly did, but they haven't had a lot of those. It's been either lightning or thunder under Kirk in most years. It's been either Tyler Goodson, Akram Wadley, or LaShawn Daniels. Trying to think of another example. Who's another big bruiser that they've had? Brandon Wager. I'm sorry, Brandon Wager is probably a bad example. I was going to say Mark Weissman. Would be a good example of that. So they had a guy a couple of years ago who slips my mind, but who was working with? It was Ivory Kelly Martin, Akram Wadley, and then who was the third guy? Somebody will tell me. 2017, Gavin Williams. That's the one I was thinking of. He was the bruiser.
Yeah,
he's had a good career, by the way, at Northern Illinois since he transferred. So. And then am I missing anybody in that room?
What happened to LeSean Williams?
Transferred to Kansas, I believe. He was committed to either Kansas or Memphis, and then he flipped to the other one. I think he's going to Kansas. I think he was originally committed to Memphis. Don't quote me on that. So, man, Mekhi Sargent. Hey, Thor Williams brings up Mekhi Sargent.
Yeah.
He was a good do-it-all back, and he was a guy I did not expect to become that. He transfers from the JUCO ranks. He was really good in 2020. Really good. They could use a guy like that. I haven't brought up Nate McNeil. He's a freshman. We've seen young backs come in and play right away, whether it be Tyler Goodson, even Akram Wadley, Kaleb Johnson, Jazz Patterson. So he's another guy. He's not going to be here in the spring. I don't believe. No, I'm sorry. He did enroll in the spring. Now that I think about that, he did enroll early. More and more guys enrolling early. You've talked about how Iowa's kind of been behind as it relates to getting guys on campus early. So he is there. So that's interesting. I don't know the last time Iowa had a running back enroll early. They may have had one, and I'm just forgetting. Terrell Washington, I think, did. I think TJ did. But he's a guy who has decent size. He's not as small as Kamari Moulton was out of high school. He's a Florida back, so he's someone that Liddell Betts obviously thought very highly of, and he's had success down there. Jazz Patterson's a Florida kid. I believe Kamari is a Florida kid, if I'm not mistaken. I know Terrell Washington's Texas, but it'll be interesting to see big group of kids competing, and he's the only running back they bring in this class.
If I remember correctly, Jazz Patterson, the game that he caught my eye was 2 years ago against Iowa State. They needed him in the fourth quarter. He put the game away. He and the offensive line, he really gained a lot of yardage off tackle, just carry after carry.
Yeah, and he had the big run in the first half on the counter play that really busted that thing open, and points are always hard to come by in that game. That's been illustrated in recent time. By the way, Kelvin Fisher brings up Torrin Young was the guy I was trying to think of in 2017. Yeah. There's another big bruising type of back. So that's why I say they typically had one or the other, and sometimes they complement one another. Maybe that'll happen this year. Maybe it'll be, a Kamari Moulton and Xavier Williams. Maybe he'll emerge, or maybe it'll be a couple of freshmen emerge. Maybe they'll lose somebody like an older player, Kamari or Jazz, and then a couple of freshmen emerge. That's possible. May the best guy win. But I do like the skill, like Aiden brings up, Kamari Moulton's skill. I think because he and Jazz, one thing they do is they both run with authority. I think they both have excellent vision. I think Kamari's maybe a little bit more patient than Jazz is, but Jazz just runs he's just like a bowling ball. He's just, no matter where he's at, he's a guy that if he could have a big year, go make some money in the league right away, because he's going to have some problems staying healthy when he gets a little older running like that. But both guys have flashed.
One of those comments coming in from Facebook, simulcasting on Twitter/X, also simulcasting on Facebook.
We love you, Kent. We love you, Kent. Yes. Share it with your friends on Facebook. Mark's trying to expand the Facebook reach.
Let's expand all over the place.
I have
new territories.
I have a question for Kent, because I see Kent's the one who commented on Facebook. Mark has done a phenomenal job building this channel over the past 4 years. But if you could share this stream on any and every page that you're a part of, group that you're a part of, to get the stream out and people can watch right there via Facebook. They don't have to leave Facebook. I think people would really enjoy being able to listen to this on the way back from work, or maybe they just got home and they're getting ready for dinner. They're putting the kids to I don't know. Kids take naps in the late afternoon. Whatever the case may be, it's a good time to put on the stream and listen to it. Maybe you cast it on your smart TV or your smart speakers. So many ways to listen when you're on Facebook and YouTube, and you can do it all.
I'll give a quick example from one of our other team channels of what's possible, because our Facebook page at the Voice of College Football is limited. A couple hundred people. We were at a couple thousand. We had Facebook issues. So anyway, we don't do much with it. We want to get it jump started. But we did a Florida State show. And a few years ago, we used to have one of the analysts start to share it. He said, you want me to share this to my Facebook groups and so forth. Suddenly, I checked the Iowa live stream that we did here last week that I shared and streamed on Facebook for the first time. I had like 35 views, what you would expect for a first time. And that's what the Florida State show would do. when he shared, now he belonged to a bunch of Florida State Facebook groups. He was a former player. When he shared that thing, we got 8,000 views on Facebook.
Yeah. There's a lot of Hawkeye fans that they don't do anything but Facebook. Just like there's a lot of Hawkeye fans that don't do anything but YouTube. So if people want to have, I mean, it's always more fun when you have a lot of people sharing opinions. And yeah, it's a lot. By the way, I'll put a promo in for you. I'll put a promo in for my channel. There's a lot of fun stuff coming on my channel over from the Hawkeye of the Storm. So we got some great people we're working with. And Chloe in the chat says lots of Hawkeye fans out in South Carolina as well. So maybe Chloe can get all the Hawkeye fans. She can just take the state of South Carolina and tell them all about it. So
absolutely. So let me ask you this about this batch of running backs. Have you seen enough to differentiate whether there's an advantage, A, from a pass receiving standpoint with any of these guys, or B, as pass protectors, which obviously sometimes from a fan perspective gets dismissed, but from a coaching standpoint, extremely important, of course, to protect the quarterback?
I know Jazz looked, there was a play just flashed through my mind. Now, consistency is another story. My short answer to you is no on number one, maybe on number two. But again, without combing through film, I wouldn't be able to tell you right now, is Kamari or is Jazz the better of the two as it relates to blitz pickup and pass catching. But I know there was at least one play against Iowa State where Jazz took out two Iowa State rushers 2 years ago. And that became like a really viral play in some regards. I think both guys have flashed in those regards. I don't think that's what held them back from getting more carries last year. It was just how electric Kaleb Johnson was with the ball. I think their room is in a really good place. And I think that's one thing that we're going to find out about this group is that although Kaleb Johnson was electric, and you could argue, well, he was the offense last year. It was year one under a new offensive coordinator and a new scheme. Bring in a better quarterback. We assume Mark Gronowski is going to be healthy by the time we hit fall camp. Knock on wood, he better be. But I just think you're going to see a better offense. So people think they're going to take a step back because Kaleb is gone. I understand where they're coming from. I think it's maybe not a naive approach, but just an uninformed approach because they've got a good room. They've got a solid room. Is it going to look different? Yes. Is there going to be more? Is there going to be more of an emphasis on the passing game? Yes. And that's a good thing because I think the passing game will be more equipped to be utilized heavier. But I also don't know that we're going to see that big of a drop with the running game. Now, my only caveat to that is I don't know yet who's playing left tackle, and I don't know yet who's playing the guard spot opposite of Bo Stevens. There's guys, like maybe it's, hey, we saw Cade Peeper flash. They obviously like him. Trevor Lauk is a young kid. We've talked about him. We'll preview the offensive line here at some point. Maybe he ends up being that left tackle. But I do believe that the offense is going to take a step forward even without Kaleb. Running back is not going to be the reason why they're if they somehow struggle, I don't think it'll be because of the running back room. I think if anything, it's going to be because of the offensive line. Or they just don't get healthy at quarterback, at receiver. Yeah, those things, assuming health is not an issue, the offense should take a step forward, and I think running back will be just fine. Maybe not as productive as having an first-team All-Big Ten guy, but it will be good. I think Liddell Betts has earned that trust from most people at this point.
You're here, folks. We assume you love college football. You're junkies, you're nerds, disputed national champions. The link is in the description section of all the videos here at the Voice of College Football. It's a historical look at the 1990s, but not just a history book. It is a projection forward toward the 4-team, the 12-team, and the 14-team playoff, which is being much talked about this week as the SEC and the Big Ten continue to just kind of take over the sport and do whatever they want and say, well, we're going to dictate that we're going to have X number of teams in the playoff, regardless of what the rankings are.
Hey, I got my copy, so people need to get theirs.
Appreciate that.
Absolutely.
All right. So before we move on to a look back at recent recruiting class and how that's fared 2022, we did 23 last week, folks. Check it out. I'll just throw this out there. I almost feel like I'm throwing this person under the bus, but at the same time, it's on social media, so they're putting it out there themselves. But I wanted to give you a response, and it's ludicrous, but got time for a response. Our Ohio State guy, Garrison, he's got a show with Ryan and Garrison. They're on the Ohio State channel. We just got them started a couple months ago. Garrison ran these Big Ten predictions by me. Nothing looked too out of the ordinary, except Iowa 0-9. I was like, what?
Where does he get? I mean, what is that?
He just kind of went game for game and said, could they lose that game? Yeah. Could they lose that game? Yeah. Could they lose it? Yeah. And that's what I got out of him in terms of, can you analyze this for me?
I don't want to rip any of your contributors, but
hey, go to it. That's why I brought it up.
Well, that just loses you. Garrison needs to be better than that, because that loses you credibility.
I know it doesn't. It's just,
it doesn't help your credibility.
I told it. Well, I didn't tell him that, but I said, you understand that this is ridiculous, that this program wins 8 games every year, basically.
Yeah. Schedule's tougher, but I mean, like, here's a big picture. Fans, I understand fans being, maybe we'll talk quarterback next week. I know why fans are scared. I know why fans are somewhat hesitant when they hear that Mark Gronowski was having to undergo surgery. He's going to miss spring. However, the other side of that coin is, I do think that the staff, including Tim Lester, should be trusted more than it was trusted when they brought in Cade. They brought in Cade under Brian. They're bringing this guy in under Tim. They're giving this kid, he doesn't get just paid in one huge sum. They're giving this kid 7 figures. I think he'll be an upgrade. I have a hard time believing that given the lack of magnitude, severity of this injury, that it's going to affect him the way Cade's injury history affected him. It's a blow. It's unfortunate to not be able to get the spring to go with his guys, but he's a really experienced player. He's more mobile. We've talked about that, and he's a better arm than Cade did. I think he's probably got a better attitude than Cade had. That's a controversial thing to say, because I know a lot of people just almost worshipped him when he came to he's such a leader. I've given my heart to him. Like, let's tone it down a little bit. Okay. All right. Tone it down a little bit. But that was the narrative out there. And then after he stops playing and, he never was a good leader, and he just should have stayed in Ann Arbor. And, it's just a convenient narrative. But from what I've heard from people who are reliable on this, is Mark is a good kid who is just a very even-keeled guy. And I think he's a team-first guy. Yeah, he's going to be coming in and making more money than some of the other guys. But revenue sharing also starts this year, Mark. And that's gonna change the money narrative, the financial narrative and dynamic, I think, with some teams. And it could be the disadvantage in the short term for some Big Ten programs. I do think I see why the conference is initiating it. But I feel better overall about the offense. I keep saying, and I think they'll win. I think they'll win. Probably. I'm not making an official prediction, but I saw a couple over-unders here already released as like 6.5. It was 7.5 last year. They hit the over on that, right? They hit the over on that. We thought it was going to be much more definitive hitting the over, but they've hit the over the last couple of years. I think they'll probably hit the over again this year. I'm not a betting guy, but I think they'll probably win 7 or 8 games. And if things come together, they could win 10 and sneak into a playoff. The schedule is going to be the biggest challenge. I think the defense will be better, and I think the offense will be better. I think they'll be a better team. I really do. I think they'll be a better team.
Well, you are a little bolder than I am in regards to the injury. You're being optimistic about it. I would like to be optimistic. We all hope for the best there. I certainly believe that as long as he is healthy, Gronowski's healthy, yes, they have, I don't want to overstate this, but decidedly upgraded at quarterback.
And they've upgraded, I think, the room. It's not like, with all due respect to the other guys that were in the room, Jackson Stratton's still part of the room. I really like Marco Lainez. I don't know that he ever got a fair shake early, but I like how you're smiling again. Well, hey, you watch.
love Marco Lainez.
He's going to go tear it up at Elon. You watch. He is going to tear it up at Elon. but bringing in Hank Brown and bringing in Jimmy Sullivan, and they got to be here for bowl prep. When's the last time you had a new quarterback, 2 new quarterbacks that were here and able to practice during December? That's big. And so they're both going to be here. They're already there. They're able to develop some chemistry with those guys. Then they're going to be able to play. That's big. And you lose Marco Lainez and James Rezar, along with Cade, who was a lame duck at the end of the year. So they've upgraded the room as a whole.
And when is the last time it could have been stated that if the starting quarterback is not ready, that you have a proven Big Ten quarterback ready to go?
Yeah, I mean, the forgotten guy in all this is the guy who finished the season, Brendan Sullivan, who probably should have been starting from the beginning last year. It's a controversial thing. I don't like how he finished his season, certainly in the bowl game, how the second half it just kind of crumbled. But he's still here, and I don't know that he'll be here in the fall. I don't know. What's his attitude towards the whole situation? Who knows? Because if Gronowski's not going to be playing on the field, what is Sullivan going to learn by the end of spring practice that he doesn't already think or know now? Because he's not going to be able to compete with him unless he can just show out and prove to the coaches. But even that, like, coaches, I can't imagine they're going to anoint him as the starting guy over Gronowski before seeing Gronowski in uniform. So, yeah, you're absolutely right. If they can keep those guys, and then, I mean, think about it, Mark. If they somehow keep Stratton and Jimmy, if they have enough spots, those spots are gobbled up by quarterbacks right now. If they keep all of those quarterbacks, that's a lot of depth. And I say a lot of depth. It's not like elite depth. But you have a guy in Sullivan who's a proven Big Ten starter who played a lot last year for this team and won some. You have a guy who has played as a starter at Auburn in Hank Brown. And then you have a guy in Jackson Stratton. Well, no, he did. He did. I'm not saying it was. I'm saying he's not a guy who's never seen the field.
Sure.
He has seen the field and played big time football. Not necessarily the best of performances, but he's played for an SEC team. Started at quarterback briefly. And Jackson Stratton comes here as a walk-on, but he played last year. So, I'm just saying you don't have, if you're in an emergency situation, now you've got 4 guys who have all started for a Power 4 team at some point, whether it just be a game or a whole season, whatever. I just think if you can bring all those guys back, wow, what a luxury. And then you can groom Jimmy Sullivan at the end.
I would think that we would be able to come to a conclusion on Brendan Sullivan's attitude toward this situation in that he decided to stay.
Yeah, and that's why I say, I mean, I think that's the catch-22. Don and I have talked about this on the post-game show, is you don't want a guy who's complacent. You don't want a guy who's comfortable being the number 2. Because if he's comfortable being the number 2, then how much of a gamer is he? And I'm not saying Brendan Sullivan's comfortable being the number 2, but if it's obvious he's not going to start, why is he staying? That's all. That's what I would want to know. That's maybe a good question for spring if we get him for spring availability. Let's play hypothetical. And some coaches don't like hypothetical questions. I think you get away with it more with players, but I'd like to ask Brendan, let's just assume that a 5-year, 5th-year decorated quarterback in Mark Gronowski is the starter. Why would you, and you're here in fall of 2025, why would you be here? Well, not saying why would, I'm not trying to ask a question, a gotcha question to try to get him to say, well, no, that doesn't make any sense. I would want to know, assuming that's what happens, give me the reason why you would still be here. And because his answer would be, if he's not going to say, well, because I'm fine with being a number 2, but I'd be curious to learn what his approach to that is. If he says, because I love this school, I love being a Hawk, I want to be the best teammate possible, I want to provide depth and be ready to go and keep competing, great. That's exactly what you want to hear. And I would assume he would say that, and hopefully that would be honest and truthful, but that's the type of competition hopefully Tim Lester and company are breeding into that room in that group.
So, unless I'm missing something here, I don't know that he could answer that question in that they bring in Gronowski. Gronowski's hurt, cannot compete in the spring. Kirk Ferentz, rightfully so, is not going to hand a starting position to a player from the outside who's not proven anything at Iowa, especially not in the Power Five. So, there is going to be a quarterback battle in August.
I would think so. Yeah, that's why I say it's kind of a hypothetical question. You know, say you lose the battle in fall. You don't want to, but say that happens. What would make you, besides just I can't transfer because it's too late, what would make you want to stay? Give me the reasons why, other than being the number one guy, you want to be at Iowa. And there should be, by the way, there should be reasons. There should be other reasons besides I want to be the number one guy. What are those reasons?
Meaning the other things that you mentioned. You like campus, your teammates,
The
you
coaches,
like
you
the
love the
culture,
coaches,
the
you love Tim
coaches.
Lester. They're
Yes.
making you a better human being. I'd be curious to see what his answer
Yeah.
to that question would be. And I don't know that I would ask it that way because, yeah, it's going to be a hard one. I guess maybe that'd be a better question during the season, right? Like, hey, you're battling every week as a backup. Tell me why you don't regret this decision. Maybe he would regret the decision at that point, but tell us what you're gaining from being a backup right now. I don't know.
I am going to deliver my quarterback rankings in the transfer portal here in the next few weeks. So,
okay. Just Big Ten or nationwide?
I'm going to go through every conference.
All right.
And then the other portion of that is I would love to go from team to team. This wouldn't take long. How many teams have a quarterback start all 12, 13, 14, however many games they play the entire season? I bet it's less than 50%.
Yeah, not Iowa. Iowa started 3 different quarterbacks this year.
Yeah, maybe it's not. It's somewhere in the 50% range, I would guess, to keep one quarterback healthy the entire year, every week. And then when you brought up the revenue sharing, my quick thought there is maybe that lessens the impact of NIL. Each one of these schools is going to have $22 million reported to spend on these players. Now, they don't have to spend it, but that's kind of the cap or the availability that's been reported for these teams at $22 million. So a player, I would think, would be less likely to just run for the money rather than weighing the decision. Okay, I can make 400,000 here, and yeah, there it's going to be 550, but I enjoy where I am. I want to be here, and it's not that big a difference.
Right. Yeah, and I've said this before, but my understanding of this, and you can correct me if I'm wrong on this, Mark, but NIL deals, because the NCAA and the conference can't tell players that you can't make money on your name, image, and likeness. But now deals of over $600 have to go before an approval committee. And I believe that's an NCAA approval committee, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me because then the Big Ten is in cahoots with the NCAA that is not regulating other conferences. That just seems odd to me. But this is a unique year, too, because they recruited guys in the portal knowing that revenue sharing was coming. So unless you're privy to the ins and outs of exactly how it's structured, the word on the street is that Gronowski got $7 million, or seven. Excuse me. Let me back up. 7 figures, $1 million plus. And so, if that's the case, how is that split? Is that all NIL money, or how does that work? I kind of got a lowdown of that from a pretty good source, but I'd have to go back and comb through how that works, I guess. And I would think it's going to affect. Yeah, it's going to affect recruiting, especially portal recruiting here in these future windows.
Yeah,
cycles.
I would think each one of these football programs knows how much money is going to be available through the revenue sharing at this point so that they can plan for the next football season, I would think.
Exactly.
All right. I believe because of time, we will put on hold our little recruiting jaunt through previous classes. But next week, we will most likely tackle the 2022 class with a 5-star at the top of board that I see as I'm looking at it right now, that Corey will be analyzing from top to bottom, booms and busts.
Hey, I saw real quick. I saw Cooper DeJean's little brother Jax I think he got an offer from Michigan here a couple of days ago. So that's interesting.
All right.
Can't fly under the radar now in Odebolt, Iowa. Not after what Cooper has done. Everybody's paying attention to, especially the DeJean last name.
Is he a similar type player?
Similar type player. I think he's projected as a DB, I believe, but he's a really good athlete. I know that. I don't know that he's got the hops. Cooper was such an unbelievable, just an athletic guy. You know, he could play basketball. You know, he's a great basketball player. He was a great football player, can do it all on the football field. So I haven't seen enough of Jackson DeJean. I just know he's really athletic, and I know Iowa wants him, and he's getting high major attention from other schools.
Have you gotten over that NBA trade from last week?
I won't get over that for a long time. A long time. Okay. I kind of have a hiatus because it was All-Star weekend, and I don't watch that crap anymore. I'll be honest. I used to. Yeah. But it sucks now, Mark. It stinks. It stinks. It was good even when I was growing up because you see Tracy McGrady and Dirk and Kobe and, you know, LeBron and Durant and all those guys. And now you have this 4-team junk, and one of the teams is a Rising Stars team, and it's just stupid. And then they're playing this mini tournament. Nobody cares. I
didn't know that.
Yeah, it's stupid. And Kevin Durant and company called it stupid heading into the thing, you know, and they still played in it. But they need to just go back to the old format. Or I do think a fascinating idea is the USA versus the world, because the discrepancy, there are so many good players from Europe, not as many now from South America maybe as before, but man, there's you don't have the Manu Ginobili's and the trying to think of some of the all-time greats from South America, but man, between Jokic and Doncic and Giannis Antetokounmpo, like, man, there's so many players from overseas that are really, really good. That would be a fun game to watch. And I wouldn't be rooting for anybody. I just want to see it.
I'm not comprehending this. There is a basketball season start to finish. There is what is called an all-star break that we're all familiar with, where you don't play basketball except for the all-star game and the three-point shooting contest and the dunk contest and the things that most of us loved watching. But now they're playing other basketball games during
No. It's on Sunday. So they have 4 teams: Shaq, Kenny, and Chuck, Charles Barkley, each like draft their teams. And then there's Candace Parker, who I think got the Rising Stars team. So she gets all the young, talented guys, which, again, why they're competing against the best players in the world makes no sense to me. But it's first to 40. So it's first to 40, and then the winners play each other later in the day. It's just stupid. It's stupid. It's stupid. It's dumb. I just don't know why we have to change. You know, look, nobody cares about the home run derby or whatever. What's the MLB thing that they do?
That's pretty serious, the home run derby.
Well, what's the all-star thing they do?
You mean like the softball game with the celebrity softball game, that kind of stuff?
Well, no, isn't there like an all-star game in the major
derby? That's a big deal. People care about the home run derby.
Come on, nobody cares about nobody cares about the Pro Bowl. Come on. You and I both know.
People care about the home run derby.
How do you know? You haven't followed the sport since the Middle Ages.
Whoa. I've been an enormous baseball fan until about 5 years ago.
Okay.
People love the home run derby. It gets great ratings, TV ratings.
Okay. I've never watched it once.
Oh.
I've never watched it once. Hey, you know what you and I can do sometime? We should do.
What?
This would probably tank your channel. Maybe we shouldn't do it on this channel, but we should do a live stream, and I'll pull out all my old baseball, basketball, and football cards, trading cards.
Oh, yeah.
And
I will as well.
We'll run through. Hey, we can compare them. I won't be able to get. You're a numbers guy. I'll just give you a random player that I have the card
I would have
for.
been great at this 10 years ago.
And you can tell me.
You sit here for 30 minutes. You keep talking. 30 seconds. 30 seconds.
30 seconds. Well, let's see. What do we guess Mark's doing right now? Yeah, I have a lot of old NBA, MLB, and NFL trading cards. They're all, Mark, if you can hear me, they're all in protective sleeves. I haven't pulled them out in at least 2 or 3 years. I could grab them in 20 seconds. It'd be quicker for me than it is for you. And I have more than that.
My son was here. I do too. My son was
Okay.
here last week, and he started in on my baseball, football, basketball cards, mostly baseball cards. That was my thing.
Yeah.
And we just sat for a few hours just looking at these, talking about players. And oh, man. Oh, my goodness. Greg Harris. You know, we could just go on and on. Yes.
Yeah, I got mine. I've got mine about, well, not even a stone's throw. If I had longer arms, I could grab them. But you got them all.
We have what kind of cards?
I've just got a mix of the three major.
Okay.
I've got plenty of all three. I was always more of a basketball guy, so I collected the MLB cards because I came upon a lot, and then the NBA cards were what I was like. I have it's not a Dirk Nowitzki rookie card. Okay, what is that?
It's Greg Nettles. You don't know who that is, do you? Do you
No,
know
I
who
don't.
Greg Nettles is?
No, he's a Yankee though, right?
Yes. Oh, he's one of my favorite players.
Okay. Yeah, I've got a whole box.
This is before your time here. We're talking guys that played in the 70s and 80s.
I've separated mine out too, so I don't. Let me show you real quick what I. Hold on a sec. Why is Jackson Johnson on my screen?
Jackson, my man. All right, folks. Until Corey gets back, we're looking at Nolan Ryan, Tim Raines, Eric Davis, Davey Concepcion, George Brett, Gary Carter, Goose Gossage, Don Mattingly, Bill Madlock, Steve Garvey, George Foster, Raleigh Fingers, Reggie Smith, Reggie Jackson, of course. We got Ron Say, Robin Yount, Paul Molitor, Dave Parker.
Wait.
Oh,
okay. How about? So are you reading baseball cards? Is that what, we've lost some viewers, by the way. Are you reading baseball cards, or what are you doing right now?
I was just reading off the names of baseball players in my album here.
How about I'll read you some players. I pulled one sleeve of NBA cards out. Right.
Okay.
I've got them in little protective sleeves. How about I read these names off to you? Sean Kemp.
Before you do,
go ahead.
Roughly how old are these players? Like how long ago?
Well, Sean Kemp was what, 90s?
Oh, I'll know them all then. Okay.
Yeah. These aren't old. And these aren't real new either. They're older. I've got several Sean Kemp cards.
Yeah.
Henry James of the Cleveland Cavaliers.
Yes.
John Morton Jr., also Cleveland.
Yeah, I remember.
Actually, I've got these separated by teams. So these are all Cavs. I got Larry Nance, whose son plays in the league. Terrell Brandon.
Oh.
Don't know who this is. Bobby Phils.
Bobby Phils.
I don't know who that is.
Number 14, correct?
Yes, Bobby Phils, number 14. What team did he play at in college? Ooh, this would be a fun game to play.
Oh, he also played for the Hornets, correct?
That I don't know. This is a night
played later.
This
Bobby
is a
Phils. Where did he play in college?
This is his.
It was a big school, right?
It's a rookie card, I think. So I
don't know the Power Conference school.
No.
Okay, I don't know.
Played at Southern.
Okay.
John Williams.
Hot Rod Williams, Tulane.
Okay, and he averaged, averaged 13 and...
I was just going to say 13 points a game.
13.3 points a game. See, this would be a fun exercise. Ooh, Craig Elo.
Oh, yeah.
I know Craig. Hey, I don't know
what he's famous for.
Yeah, he averaged, he had a year where he averaged 14 a game.
He is the guy that was assigned to guard Jordan on the shot that he made.
That's right. Shot on Elo. Good. The Bulls win. They win.
Yeah.
Yep. How about, here's a good one. Bob Sura.
Oh, from Florida State.
Is he Florida State? That's a cool card. This is a cool looking card. Got the little reflective.
Am I gaining a little respect on my college basketball?
Yeah, but we would need to do this for a little bit longer. This is just one sleeve. I'm giving you only Cleveland Cavaliers. Brad Doherty,
North Carolina.
Yeah,
I'd say his career average was about 18 points a game.
Oh man, just hold this one up.
Okay.
Can you see it?
No, it darkens when you put it too close.
Steve Kerr.
Steve Kerr.
And One of the
He did a little
greatest,
coaching.
one of the greatest Cavs of all time.
Do you know where Steve Kerr went to college?
No.
Arizona.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't know that. One of the greatest Cavaliers of all time.
I can't see that from here.
You can't tell who it is. Number 25.
Mark
White
Price.
guy. Mark Price.
Love Mark Price. One of the great free throw shooters in history.
Yeah.
Georgia
One of the great
Tech,
shooters in history.
one of the great shooters in history.
Yeah. These Sean Kemp cards are really, really cool too. This one's like it's got the, almost like as you turn it, it changes. You probably can't tell on the screen, but as you turn it, it changes. It's almost, what's the word? It changes coloration as you turn it.
Yeah, I don't know what that's called.
But yeah, that's just scratching the surface here.
Very cool.
I could pull out all my, let's see, this is Nets. All my New York or New Jersey Nets. All the Spurs. T-Wolves, Chuck Person.
Chuck Person, who played most of his time with the Pacers.
Ooh, Philadelphia. I bet you wouldn't get many of these Raptors. Actually, I just have one.
Oh, come on.
I don't even know who this guy is. Let's see. Who is this guy? What's his? I can't even read that.
I know who played in the NBA in the 90s.
Tabak? Zahn Tabak?
Zahn Tabak. I don't remember him.
Selected by Toronto with a 15th pick in the 95 NBA expansion draft.
Oh, really?
Played in 8 NBA playoff games for the Rockets en route to a championship.
I'm sure I knew who he was at the time.
Yugoslavia. How about Heat? Oh, here's a Dikembe Mutombo card.
Okay.
Horace Grant of the Magic.
Horace Grant.
How about this guy right here? Shaquille O'Neal.
Yeah, I've heard of him.
I wish these cards were worth something, but they're not.
I know. It's the same thing with me. Like I get a zillion cards and they're worthless. They're
worthless. But they're, I mean, if they're, here's the deal. This is something I can't bear to part with. You know, like of things that I'm going to get rid of because I'm trying to simplify. This is not one of the things I want to get rid of. I just don't. I have no interest in doing that.
I don't either. Well, why do it? It brings back my childhood. They also don't take up space.
No. They're small and they're cool to pull out every once in a while.
Yeah. No doubt about that.
I think people would get bored with this exercise if we did it, but
yeah, I don't know. Sometimes, late at night, I've done these sorts of things with my audience and they kind of get into it.
Well, I could pull out football. Hey, I could play. Here's what I could do. I got plenty of NFL trading cards. I could pull out some NFL trading cards and we could just go through as a frame of reference and say, okay, where'd this player play in college?
We could do a football. Yes, let's do that sometime. We could start with a football night, and if it's successful, then we come back a couple months later and we do a basketball night.
Yeah, that would at least keep the theme on college football. We did that.
Okay.
I don't have college football. I might have 1 or 2 college football cards. Do you have college football trading cards?
I have some, but they're obviously not popular.
Yeah, so nobody cares.
Yeah. All right, folks. We do appreciate you being here and hanging with us. Hawkeyes Live is every Tuesday with Corey and myself, 5:30 Eastern, 4:30 where it counts. And Corey, your next show is coming up when?
We got men's basketball post game tomorrow night. They play Oregon for the first time since conference expansion, so they'll welcome them to Carver. 7:30 tip, and we'll have post game coverage at 9:30. And then women are back on the court on Sunday.
Chloe would watch our show.
Chloe.
Sorry, Chloe.
Yeah.
All right, folks. We'll see you next week and join Corey after the men's basketball game on Wednesday night.
Thanks, Mark.